Hi there, everyone. Rob here. I am joined in with videographer James Reynolds out of Hong Kong, also a good friend of mine, Chris here, a meteorologist here, who has just recently done a tour with the United States military here in Eastern Asia and the Western Pacific. And this is our weekly hangout we have started just over the past several weeks. And we're just going to go through and discuss some of the hot topics as far as weather is concerned over the past week and the week to come. But as far as today, here on Saturday, the 8th of March, what we have been covering is what has been going on out here into the Gulf of Thailand, just south of Vietnam. A Malaysian airline taking off from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, lost contact earlier on this morning. And it does look like the most recent news, as far as official confirmations, is that it is not going to be making it anywhere, and that the contact was lost just south of the southern portions of Vietnam. James, you just said you received some of the latest information on that, if you want to.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's looking like our worst fears could be coming true. I've just been looking at some media reports coming out from news source, and it's showing that the Vietnamese Navy might have found wreckage south of Phu Quoc Island, which is in the extreme southern part of Vietnam. So, it's still obviously a developing situation, but personally, our worst fears could be confirmed soon.
Yeah, and as far as I guess weather is concerned, we were just talking about it a few moments ago. Um, it doesn't look like that should have played a part in this. Where the plane lost its contact with the radar here and with the radio stations on the ground was it was flying at about 35,000 feet, as what people are kind of putting out here. At that point, I mean, you're at cruising altitude. Thunderstorms shouldn't have a big impact. When you ever talk about thunderstorms and weather playing a role in plane crashes, it's usually near the surface. I mean, Chris,
Takeoff and landings are the biggest.
Chris has worked in aviation meteorology for some time, and yeah, when is the most likely scenario?
Takeoff and landings are the biggest threat because that's when you're going through so much of the atmosphere versus changing it or staying at the same altitude. So
Yeah, make sure you speak.
yeah.
All right. So yeah, takeoff and landing definitely one of the major problems with this. And at this point, it was at cruising altitude. 2 hours into its flight, it was moving north over the Gulf of Thailand, and I don't see weather being a major role in this particular scenario. So I guess with that said, there's not much more to say at this time. It's still a developing situation, but if anything, and no one can really say it's still flying or it's still in the air because it would have ran out of fuel several hours ago.
Yeah, and given those reports from which are starting to come in, I think we should start getting more information coming in, more concrete information coming in over the next few hours, especially if the Vietnamese authorities are on the scene.
Yeah. All right. So I guess if we do get any more information, we can go back to this topic here. But I think what some other people may be tuning in, especially if they're not watching the live broadcast, is to hear a little bit more about your recent trips here to the Philippines. There, James, you just returned, doing some shooting down there, and as you said, you're preparing for a documentary. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we just got back from about 6 or 7 days trip to the Philippines. Really went back to Tacloban to basically revisit the areas which we first visited before Yolanda made landfall, and then also to basically kind of try and whilst all along we're filming a lot of footage for an upcoming documentary.
gave them, and you shared, and you, Mark, and Josh all were some of the first people to put the information out there of how strong and how bad the devastation was. What was your feedback from the people on the ground once you returned, though?
Well, it's always something I'm being quite sensitive to. If you're working and documenting such an extreme and destructive event, such as Yolanda was, how the local people are going to feel about our presence on the ground doing our work, and really was just really overwhelmed by the hospitality and positive feedback which we got on return. The fact that the storm was documented so extensively by us and by others has been really, really appreciated by the people there. They want to be able to have a record of what happened to their city, their communities. Really kind of for the historical record, because it's such an important part of the history of that region now, and also I think on a personal level as well, so that they can just kind of make sense themselves of what happened when Yolanda hit that region. So it was very, very. I was personally very touched by the reception we got from the local people there and the hospitality. Just absolutely amazing.
How at this point as well? I think that's another question a lot of people have had. And I know there has been a lot of rumor, a lot of speculation that the recovery is very slow. But I think from some of the reports that you were saying when you were down there, we were following your Twitter, was that it's actually coming along pretty decently.
Yeah, certainly in portions of downtown Tacloban city, you and there's just a real bustle and life to the city, which is great. However, having said there are a lot of very, very traumatized people, especially the children. The psychological effect of what happened is really still very raw with a lot of people there, and it's that is going to take an extremely long time for people to heal. And I really think they need all the assistance they can get as well in just kind of overcoming the, the such a traumatic experience. And people still get very wary when they see reports of, say, new storms forming, or even if just afternoon thunderstorms can really trigger, flashbacks and can be very upsetting for a lot of people there. So it's often a kind of unreported side effect of the disaster. And outside of Tacloban itself, when you go to the smaller villages and communities, it's still a very, very, very big mess. And there are a lot of people living in tents, of course, and there's still a huge amount of cleanup needs to be done.
Well, that is very good news at the very least. I suppose that it is coming along, though, and I know that we have a lot of people from the Philippines that do watch these updates, and from what I've seen, if any country can recover from a severe system quickly, it is definitely that one. You hear very little. I have seen very little complaining from people. I mean, after the immediate storm system, after it did occur, what we did see was a little bit of a slow response with the government. But I mean, outside of that, no one really was complaining. I mean, you just kind of deal with it and you pick up the pieces and you move on. Is that kind of what the mentality was there?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the toughest people on the planet from the Philippines. A lot of people are used to having to look after themselves. There's not really kind of, so much of like a social security system to rely on. And a lot of people, unfortunately, prior to the storm, were kind of living a hard life. A lot of people living in poverty. So I think just it's kind of ingrained in them that these are tough, resilient people. So imagine if something like this happened to a Western country, there would be a lot more complaining going on, as opposed to in the Philippines, where it's really like, right, they're just trying to get on with it as best as they can and get their lives back on track.
Well, it's all good information, and really, thanks again, James, for sharing with it. We're definitely looking forward to your guys' documentary, and as far as you've already put one out, I don't have the video loaded on this, but please, if anybody is watching, please do check out James's channel on YouTube. It is under Typhoon Hunter, or you can follow him on earthuncut.tv online. It definitely, or on Twitter at Typhoon Fairy. Your Twitter is always very interesting to follow. Definitely one of my top ones on there because, especially during storms, and one of the very few ways to get information. But he's already released a documentary. It's something you cut together really quick, but I think that is, as far as good information on storm systems, it is one of my favorite out here. Have you seen his documentary yet?
I have not.
Oh well,
not yet, so
we're gonna pull it up later.
Yeah.
It's some good stuff. And plus, you're also on the travel channel. You, Josh, and was it Jim? All were together on the travel channel documentary.
Yeah, and that's it was, I think it was the Discovery Channel, but it's probably been syndicated to other channels as well. And that documentary was a 1 hour special piece on the storm, and that's actually gone down very well in Tacloban as well. People have been watching it and really finding it useful to try and get an understanding of what happened during the storm.
I think it's definitely, and it's something that I'm gonna go out of my way and try to order that DVD set for it, and definitely looking forward to your guys' stuff once it's all released. That you have just recently shot there, and I know you, Mark, and Josh have all been very busy on it. Speaking of, and I think a lot of people are kind of curious, how is Mark and his leg?
Yeah, it's a good question. He's doing very well. It was a long recovery. I think he spent over 2 weeks in hospital.
Actually, James, I have the video up on the screen right now, and it's just showing what I'm talking about here. If somebody wasn't sure, you guys were going through the storm surge at the height of this storm, and Mark cut himself on a piece of metal. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's one of the many dangers of storm surge. It's not just the water itself and the fact that it's flowing quickly. Is all the debris hidden in it, and that's unfortunately how Mark got into trouble. Was basically ripping his leg open on a piece of submerged roof metal, which was in the water. But no, he's made a very good recovery. He's got some very big scars, kind of a tattoo from Tacloban, as we joke. But no, he's all healed and well, and it's with the amazing efforts of some great doctors and nurses in Taipei.
Yeah, I was kind of made that joke as well. I mean, if you're going to get a scar, you're going to get a significant scar. Definitely, I think the best case scenario is getting one trying to save people in a rising storm surge and one of the strongest typhoons in history out there. So, yeah,
but it was he was very lucky to the prognosis from the doctors he was talking to just goes to show how serious it was at the time and how lucky we were to get out so quickly. Was they reckoned another 24 to 48 hours and he could have lost his leg. So that's how kind of serious it was at the time.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know it was that serious. I knew he was cut up pretty bad, but that's pretty significant. So yeah, thanks again for sharing all that information with us, and I really do hope that the viewers here definitely appreciate that as well. I think we got a few other things to talk about here today, though, and while you're up here, I know you were in the Philippines the entire time this happened. But we were definitely watching it very closely. You were over in Korea while this whole past week. Were you guys keeping an eye on near what was going on in Guam?
Yes, we were keeping track of that storm and how its track was going to end up playing out. We had to watch out for some ships ourselves.
Yeah, and this is what we're talking about here. It was a very odd, I guess odd is definitely a good word to use, typhoon I put severe tropical storm facts on here, but it was upgraded to a typhoon for about 6 hours by the Japan Meteorological Agency. A typhoon in March, definitely not something you would hear of too often. I'm sure if this was the Atlantic, it would be absolutely kind of blowing everybody's minds out here. But it dropped a lot of rainfall. There was reports of flooding and even some landslides in Chuuk, southeast of Guam, but Guam itself just saw some breezy conditions and nothing too serious. I put the track up on the screen actually, and it was just wobbling there southeast Guam. It was a big pain to really track, and definitely one of these storm systems that I kind of hate it because of the lack of steering flow out here. But as far as today, it's gone. But I mean, very, very rare circumstance to see a typhoon in March. I mean, James, you've been tracking these for a long time. When's the earliest you remember seeing? I mean, we see name storms, but what's the earliest you ever seen a typhoon?
Yeah, this is pretty early, and just off the top of my head, I can't really remember seeing any typhoon strength systems this early in the year. And I think what is it? Is it February, early March is climatologically the slowest time of the year as well out here. So it's certainly interesting to see. And obviously, I'm hearing rumors that there might be an El Nino on the way. So I'm not sure if this is in any way connected to that. But I think it's certainly going to be, it already has been an interesting season, and hasn't really begun yet.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key things is this a precursor? I mean, it's the third named storm system of 2014. Two have already hit the Philippines. We have this one, a typhoon, and there has been the National Weather Service, so the Climate Prediction Center in the U.S. just released that information yesterday, I believe, that they're expecting a strong El Nino this year. Now, that's the latest information, and it's climate, it can change, but they just released that. So I think that would be very interesting. Now, as far as El Nino, it's supposed to keep at least tropical systems on the down low for at least the Philippines, etc., and more of them towards Japan. Is that, I think I'm correct for this area out here?
Correct.
My understanding
once
is
they put it out
that
yesterday, I started looking into it, so I haven't had too much time to poke around with it.
Sorry, go ahead, James.
Well, my understanding is that El Nino will kick up a larger number of storms, but the activity has shifted further east, which basically increases the threat to the Guam, Marianas, and then obviously any recurving systems up to Japan. But it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Yeah, they do move, they form further east, but there are larger numbers of storms, so everyone's going to have to keep an eye out as usual for the threat of landfalls.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up a graphic that I made yesterday here. I'm going to try to pull it up really quick. Basically just showing you, this is kind of what I did, a little bit of research in, and of course it's nothing official, but kind of what exactly the conditions that occur during an El Nino. It's just showing, the cyclone tracks a little bit farther towards the east, right around the Guam area, Yap, Palau. You might have to make a few more trips off to the Okinawa region if a significant one occurs. And the reason is because the high pressure kind of sets in over the South China Sea. The Westpac High moves farther east. And a big problem is maybe there's a drought conditions into southern Asia. And that's another thing we've been talking about all week, was these fires and the haze situation across much of Indonesia. And that could even just exacerbate that situation. But, I think you're right, and maybe you could have a little bit more of a likelihood of a Guam impact, and if Faxai is an indication of anything, it would be that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as ever, you can't really tell what's going to happen this far out, but, El Nino is certainly going to make things interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing. And a few people have been asking me, how do you know what would happen with an El Nino case? And it's just historical context. All right, I think James has to leave here in just a little bit. He just got up. I see the wife back there. Do you have to take off here in just a few minutes?
I'm back. No worries, I'm back.
All right. How is she? I know that she's coming along rather decently.
Who's this then?
I'm sorry?
I missed that. What's the question?
Your wife. I know that you have a kid coming here in the very near future.
Yes.
Congratulations on that as well.
Yeah, I'm going to have a big, it's going to be like a Category 5 event in my personal life coming up. About 5 weeks till our first child is born, so very excited about that.
It's coming right around the corner. Well, congratulations on that. So,
Thank you.
let's see. Let's get back to some of this other stuff that is going on out here today. And is there any new information? If anybody is watching and they're quite curious about the airline, I haven't seen anything new outside of what we started off with. That the 777 lost contact south of Vietnam here, and it looks like it was official confirmation that it did crash somewhere there. Weather shouldn't have played a role. All right, I think that's on that. So do you want to change topic up here? And I know Chris has been quite quiet back here. And yeah, Chris, let's talk about, and James, feel free to ask him any questions if you're curious. He did this very similar job that I used to do with the U.S. military, and I know he rolled through Hong Kong quite a few times. So yeah, I guess in a few short sentences, what can you say about working out here in Eastern Asia and the Western Pacific?
It's a diverse environment. You see so many different weather phenomenon compared to a lot of other regions like Europe that won't see kind of monsoonal troughs and won't see the extreme changes between the monsoons and typhoons and earthquakes, tsunamis. There's so much out here. There's a lot to learn, and you get a lot of a great experience. So.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key things to keep in mind as well. Is you mentioned earthquakes and tsunamis. That's always something very different here, and it's kind of one of those situations. Were you here for any significant tsunamis on this?
There
region?
wasn't any significant ones that while I was here. There was I think one warning that got put out, but turned out to just be like a 1-2 feet. Wasn't a big deal at all.
Nah.
Which is good.
What do you think was the most challenging area to forecast out here? Or what are the most exact challenging aspect?
I still think typhoons have always been, that's a challenge in its own. So all the typhoons that constantly typhoon after typhoon here in the Western Pacific was a huge challenge.
Yeah. What was one of the most memorable ones? Now you were here to cover Haiyan that we've been talking about here. Yes. Were you were involved as well? Were you involved with the forecasting and the recovery efforts there?
Yeah, we were. I mean, we were making the briefs, and it was really cutting edge for the fact that you're kind of in a position to see what's about to happen, and really start to like put that thought in the ear that hey, this isn't. This is going to be a significant storm. Like if the forecast holds true, it's going to be the strongest storm to ever make landfall. So you know what that means and what kind of relief effort that's going to be required with that, and the ability to put that voice in the ear of people is really good. So to start getting things in the right direction for efforts to start helping out.
Yeah. I think, because that was one of the big things out there was the military response, and there was a lot of international relief that did come in after you left there, James. I know that a lot of international agencies just started rolling in, and that's one thing Chris was involved in was the weather forecasting for the people that were coming in for some sort of relief efforts. So it was definitely...
Yeah. It was amazing again, like to just see the mobilization of especially like military units, and it was really kind of like a war zone, in those first few days in the aftermath. So it was amazing to just see the whole, military machine being operating at full capacity, so to speak, and operating in this difficult environment and just doing an amazing job.
Yeah. So anything else though? I mean, would you do it again? I guess is the big question. How did you like Japan as well? I mean, you were kind of visit out here.
Yeah, I love Japan. Japan was great. We're only here so long, so you almost feel like you're back to being a tourist when you come back home. So you get to relearn Japan, and then when we leave, we're out, away from it. So you kind of get to miss it and be a tourist when you come back home.
You said you leave though as well, and I know from my experience you go to a lot of places. How many countries did you go to? Do you know offhand?
It's been about 20 countries, or 15, I think was the number we were at.
Yeah.
So 15 countries, and there's just so many different different aspects. Things change so much. It's such a small area. It's
Even
interesting.
Headed down south to Australia, right?
Australia was really nice.
Yeah. James, have you covered any storms down there?
Yeah, I did one in Darwin in 2010, I think it was. It was just a weak tropical storm, but it stalled near the city and brought record-breaking rainfall to the Darwin area. It was called Carlos, but that was by accident. I was there on holiday.
Have you gotten anything? I know Nitso might. He was thinking about joining in with us here today. Has he wrote you about this latest one at all? Because
I've only managed to keep half an eye on it, but it does look like there is something potentially spinning up and affecting Queensland. So I'm sure those boys will be very busy over the next couple of days.
We've kind of tracking it here as well. Definitely very interesting stuff. I guess back to asking Chris, did you go near any tropical systems? I know it's your job to keep the boats away from it, but how high were the seas when you were out there?
Out near,
what was the worst case scenario?
I think the worst we got up to was we had some seas coming through the Coral Sea. They got up to about 12 to 15. There's some nice long pretty swells. It was
down south.
Some systems moving along southern Australia and building up seas in the Coral Seas. So
this makes me sick thinking about it.
It was a lot of bouncing around, and it was pretty entertaining.
There's nothing. Well, I'll take the ground any day over being in the ocean when there's a tropical system nearby, or just large waves or anything like that. You can just videotape it from the shoreline. But actually, I'm just pulling up the outlook there. We were talking about the Australian. He just mentioned the Coral Sea, so I guess this is a good time to just bring it up really quick. And I have the GFS model outlook, and I know the models have been all over the place for it. There's actually 2 tropical lows there, James. There's one in the Gulf, and then there's one in the Coral Sea, and the Bureau of Meteorology is actually warning on both of these for the potential for development. And they last time I checked, they were expecting the one in the Coral Sea to be making up to a cyclone Category 1 status.
Oh, yeah. So it's like a double attack, so to speak.
Yeah. I'm trying to pull up the warning from the Bureau of Meteorology right now. Here, I'm going to plop it up on the screen. Yeah, there's 2 tropical lows. This is the latest warning from the Bureau of Meteorology. They're expecting to make a cyclone or Category 1, making landfall just southeast of Boone. It's not going to be anything too insane. It looks like they switched their cyclone watch a little bit farther south today. But I think this could be one of those big rainmakers for the Queensland coastline. We've seen that in the past.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the other tropical low as well, which they got forecast in the on the western side of the Cape York Peninsula, and it looks like they got that coming in as a Cat 2 near Weipa or Weipa, however the pronunciation is, a Cat 2 on the Australian scale, which would be a tropical storm, I believe. So it does look like they could be having simultaneous hits on both coasts of Queensland, which is quite rare.
I bet you, I don't know, I haven't talked to Chris or Nitso from Cyclone Chasers today, but I bet they are having probably a big discussion on what storm to put them. I'm sure they're probably going to go to the one on the Queensland coastline because that's a little bit easier of a intercept, but that definitely has to be one of those. I mean, this past year you had very similar instances like that, didn't you? Where it was kind of like with the back-to-back storms, you had 3 storms within what?
Yeah, it was exactly. We did 2 in 2 in the space of 2 days in Okinawa, which was quite crazy, and then 3 in a week. So it was just when the storms start cranking out and forming in close succession, it can get very busy if you're trying to film them.
Well, right now it does look like Southern Hemisphere is getting it. I have I'm going to put up the 72-hour rainfall accumulation on the screen right now. And, my goodness, that is a tremendous amount of rainfall. I actually have the graph there. That is upwards. And a few areas, about 20 15 to 20 inches. That's a crazy amount of rain. So yeah, there is a very significant flood risk definitely coming out of this one. But let's see, as far as any comments, it doesn't look like we really have gotten any here. So I don't think I'm going to keep this running very much longer there, James. And if people are watching all the way through, that's going to be pretty nice, and I'm sure that at the very least this is going to be able to play back. This is one of the first times we're doing this on Ustream, Vice YouTube, so still trying to get people used to this format. But if anybody wants, if you do want to watch, you can go back and rewatch us through, and definitely appreciate you joining us here as well. And thanks again, Chris, for joining in, and definitely look forward to hearing more of your sea stories as far as what has happened out here.
Yeah, and I'm going off to my next location, so I'll be off on the Gulf Coast down in Mississippi, so I'll actually get a... There's never anywhere to run and get away from all the weather, but I'll be able to still get to deal with weather over there, so it'll be interesting.
That's very interesting. Europe, West Pacific now, the North America. That's pretty good. And thanks again, James, for joining us here. I always appreciate it. I hope you come in next week or anytime you have a time available. I know it's nice chatting with you from time to time here. And
it's good to be with you. I'm hitting the road again on Tuesday for 9 days, unfortunately, so I won't be around next weekend. But I'll certainly, in the going forward, and especially as typhoon season starts cranking up, happy to be with you guys and talk.
All right. Well, yeah. Thanks again, then, and I will talk to you later. I'm gonna show a few other imagery here from this past week, and just put this up on the screen, and if anybody is still watching near the end, I just pulled these up really quick. You're kind of just highlighting. I want to do this once a week, is just highlighting what has happened out here, and there goes James. He's out right now. First and foremost, this is just this past week's in Sydney. There were some severe thunderstorms. That was on Tuesday. These squall lines pushed straight over the city. Some pretty incredible stuff. Nothing tropical related, but these afternoon thunderstorms that popped up. And coming from one of Jupiter's moons, Io, there's a volcano erupting. NASA released this image earlier on this week, so some pretty interesting stuff there as well. But that is all for right now, everybody. Thanks again for watching here at westernpacificweather.com. Thanks again, Chris, for joining, and also James for joining in there as well. And I hope everybody stays safe out there.